Polipede works here. So let's talk about 1059, right? Okay, so before we talk about anything else, let's talk about the interesting part first because I've got a big idea about it. So in this chapter, we are introduced to the new fighting force of the Marines, the PX model Seraphim, right? We have a model that looks like a boahancock, and we have a model that looks like mihawk. These are both children variants of the two former warlords whom have Lunarian features. So they're brown skin, white hair, and black wings, right? Okay. Here's the interesting part about them. Now, clones in One Piece, okay? Your Germa clones, your pacifistas, the pacifistas that aren't the Seraphim, obviously, the ones that are based off of Kuma, and your numbers, so the ancient giants made by Vegapunk. Okay, the thing with all of them is they are foot soldiers or they are big bodies that are made to thin out foot soldiers, to thin out a herd, to lessen an army. So they're either the army or the anti-army, right? They aren't individuals of quality, they're individuals of quantity. Either you have a lot of them to overwhelm enemy forces, or you have a few of them, but they kind of have unfocused yet devastating attacks. None of these guys are trained. None of these guys seem to have the capacity to learn any techniques, okay? That's their flaw. That's why they're kind of treated after a certain point like fodder by the main characters. The only time pacifistas were a threat was in the pre-time skip, and they were used to show how much the crew has grown in the post-time skip. Therefore, them, the Germa clones, and the numbers are all fodder. With that being said, I'm not saying they can't develop personalities, unless we're talking about the pacifistas, because they seem to be more robots than anything, since they also explode after they're defeated or just take too much damage. I'm saying they can't develop techniques. They can't develop a focused fighting style. I'm not saying they can't be characters, unless we're talking about, again, the pacifistas. But with these Seraphim, these new PX models, these particular models, I'm thinking they aren't clones, because one of the first feats that we see is the Mihawk variant of these Seraphim, using an attack that's very similar to the attack Mihawk used in Marineford that Jozu blocked, or at least it's suggested that the attack performed was a wind blade, a wind cutting beam. Now, based on Zoro's entire journey as a swordsman, right, from, let's say, Whiskey Peak to the fight against the gun guy on Skypiea, right, wind cutting techniques are a fighting style. They are a trained, focused thing. That was the entire point of that entire journey with Zoro. That's character development. That's power development. That's to show you that wind blades are a focused technique that takes time to learn, or you have to at least have the capacity to learn in order to do that. We've seen the CP9 agents do that as well with Tempest Kick. Again, that's a martial art technique. A martial art technique would take time and practice and the capacity to learn in order to do that. What I think is happening, if you recall, way back in Punk Hazard with Smoker, Tashiki, and all the children that Caesar Clown had, let me remind you, after they're on the ship leaving Punk Hazard, that's where Mocha and her friends, Mocha was the big girl that Chomper grew a relationship with. After they leave Punk Hazard, that's where Mocha and her friend's story technically ends. We don't know anything after that. Now, mind you, the children that Caesar Clown was keeping were already large because he was using them to create giants for Big Mom. They were already big, not giant size, but around the size of these new Seraphim. They were large. On top of that, and they came in varying sizes, also true. They also had super strength, a lot of them, and their kind of genes were already putty, fit for molding. So, I say that to say, would it be possible, since they were already being sent to Vegapunk already, that they were sort of the prime material in order to make these new Seraphim? Well, you may be saying, well, PW, They don't look like the warlords. How could that be? Well, let me say some words on that. Okay, so is it possible that since the pacifistas have a memory core that contains all the, or some sort of memory unit that contains all of the present bounties posted by the world government, right? They have some sort of facial recognition technology. They can look at a pirate and the pirate's bounty pulls up in their mind's eye or some sort of screen inside their head, right? Okay, so since there's a data bank on bounties, could it be possible that there's a data bank on all of these warlords' fighting styles? Because even though some are flippant about serving the world government, I'm willing to bet that each one of them has done something on the world government's behalf. So all the warlords have possible battle data on them recorded by the world government in some way or fashion. Then that battle data could be then translated into these children from Punk Hazard so that they can perform the same feats as these warlords. On top of that, we don't know what exactly goes into becoming a warlord. You may have to give a DNA sample to be on record. And that may be how the facial recognition works. Like, because we understand that pacifistas at the time did not attack warlords based on facial recognition. We don't know if that's based off of simply a database thing with their bounties being frozen, or is that because the pacifistas were given like a DNA sample, and whomever matches the DNA sample that they look upon face matches the frozen bounty poster, that initiates a protocol for them not to attack that individual. We don't know. However, here's my issue. Because that's the first feat that we are shown, a feat of the mihawk seraphim cutting Amazon lily in half, basically, the mountain lilies in half. That shows me that this particular child is very well trained. Now, we do know that Lunarians do have pyrokinetic abilities. True. We do know they have that sort of like weird body density thing when the fire is on or not. Also true. But it would be very convenient to graft that onto someone whom already has pliable DNA and whom already has a degree of super strength, which all the kids from Punk Hazard did. Now, this could be immediately washed under the bridge. It could be immediately wrong if we see Mocha in a cover story. But Punk Hazard was almost 10 years ago now, so I don't know what to say, man. I don't know. I'm saying it's really convenient. We haven't seen Smoker either, nor Tashigi. And if you're kind of for Smoker becoming a pirate or Tashigi becoming a pirate, if they know that this happened, this could be their gateway into piracy. Or more likely their gateway into sword. Just from this chapter alone, I'm kind of wondering what Smoker and Tashigi are doing narratively. Because if you wanted a Garp equivalent to Luffy, as, like, say, in this situation, Luffy would be Gold Roger and another character would be Garp, I gotta tell you, Kobe is looking more and more like Garp every arc. Because now there's this setup with him being captured by Blackbeard, as we see at the end of the chapter. To me, that's putting Kobe on Front Street to being more important. Like I said, Smoker hasn't done anything significant since Punk Hazard. And in Punk Hazard, he kind of got washed and mollywopped by everybody. Got washed by Law, got washed by Virgo. And Virgo didn't even have a double fruit, it was just used in hockey. So I'm just wondering, what is Smoker's purpose in the narrative moving forward if he obviously is not up to snuff with Luffy in terms of power or narrative significance? It's a little strange. It's a little odd to me. So he could become a pirate, and I will say, if we're suggesting that he'll be a straw hat or not, I'm not against it, but I need to see how it will turn out. Because the thing about Smoker is that he's got a power set in which he doesn't step on anyone's toes like a certain someone that may or may not have a higher bounty than Sanji at the moment. But we won't go into that. The point is that he's a Logia user, but he's a Logia user that's not like overly destructive. If anything, he's more like Luffy in that he has to make the best of what he's got because Smoke in no way is offensive. unless you're using it to sort of bypass someone's odd defenses like Smoker did against Alvida and Bucky in Logtown. But yeah, so he's kind of the most inoffensive Logia to have as a main character, if a Logia were to be a main character. But we'll see about that. Other things to note, like many Doctor characters in the series, if they have a initial good reputation and are praised for being so great and so much this and so much that, they're probably an unscrupulous character. They're probably a bit of a villain. Caesar was talked up to be a great guy, and Hogback was talked up to be a great guy, and they turned out to be blights against nature and just overall terrible people. So, also to remind you of something, to sort of bolster my Caesar's kids are Seraphim case, do you know who's being a main character now in the current cover story? Caesar Clown. I'm just saying, we're bringing up characters who are related to other characters. This happens a lot, but nothing's confirmed yet, but that's my stance on it. The Seraphim are the kids from Punk Hazard, and Mocha. Mocha is currently Hancock. She's the first one we see. It's a little weird that the first one we see is a female. I'm not sure, but it's possible. And in terms of making someone look like someone else, if they've got the DNA of the warlords on hand right, you can just mold and shape somebody's face. They can make clones of Kuma. They can rework somebody to look like someone else. In fact, Sanji does that by just kicking them really hard. So facial reconstruction is not entirely impossible. Also, we know that the DNA from King is on hand from when he was a child. So yes, they've had that for years, potentially. Also, potentially, they have Oni DNA from Kaido. But if you ask me, a proper or the more valuable asset between Kaido and King is most likely Kaido, because Onis just seem to be strong dudes. They don't have any like pyrokinetic abilities or anything extra, but that's just my opinion, just based off what we've seen. If we're under the impression that Yamato, Kaido, and a good sum of the Beast Pirates, save for like Jack and Queen, are Onis. We've seen enough to sort of come to the conclusion that they're just strong guys. They're just guys who have a bit more endurance than the average person, which that's fine. And then Kaido just seems to be like a prime specimen of his race. But in terms of just powers in general, King has it unlocked. King has all the abilities. We know this. Okay, now here's the question. Talking about Yamato, I do think she said she'll find another reason into reference of what to tell Momonosuke so his pride wouldn't be hurt. But I do think she might actually have to leave at some point, because otherwise, narratively, how is Momonosuke going to be a character that can stand up on his own if he always has big sister Yamato there to protect the island? I think she'll stay on the island for as long as she is needed to, but she will eventually leave and actually join. That's what I think. So I think it is a Jinbei situation. We just don't know how the situation will be. But based on how fast some characters can scale, I'm under the impression that Momonosuke will probably grow up rather fast in terms of just power, even from the training that he would get from Kinemon and the boys that are left. So that's what I think. Otherwise, Vasco shots in this chapter. He still seems to be wearing his prison uniform, which is weird, but you can't really tell what he's wearing because he isn't in that many shots. So he doesn't do anything besides make a very raunchy comment about taking Boa Hancock. Yeah, but okay. He's a pirate. He's the piratist. Well, yeah, Blackbeard's crew is the most piratey pirates ever pirated in One Piece, apparently. Well, I guess other than Gold Roger. Also, we find out that Shock was the former pirate empress of Amazon Lily. That's cool. A lot of people thought she was a rocks pirate, but apparently Wang Zi, I can never pronounce his name correctly, was the former head of Pirate Island, and Kobe helped Teach take that over, or whatever Kobe was doing at the time helped Teach take the island over. So it probably wasn't direct help, it was just his actions on the island helped Teach take over. I wonder if we're ever going to see that, because that's a very interesting piece of information, and we still don't know much about the Rocks Pirates as a whole. We haven't even seen Rocks himself like out of silhouette, so that's something that will probably be touched upon later. But yeah, very interesting chapter. I wonder what these Seraphim kids, why do they have stars for pupils? That's a weird thing. Also, another thing, the Mihawk kid has his eyes, but I guess it's the art of him is kind of sort of smushed in. You can't see the stars in the hawk eyes of the kid. And that's another thing too, why I'm kind of so persistent on them being the kids from Punk Hazard is because there'd be no reason to copy Mihawk unless you're going after his skills as a swordsman. There's actually no reason why. So, seeing as how clones narratively from the start of the concept being introduced don't learn skills, they kind of just stand in the way or make a way. It would make more sense to then put all of this gene information, this DNA information, onto a already malleable base, and that malleable base being the sort of genetically unstable children of Punk Hazard. So we'll see. Again, we'll see. But I'm kind of in the camp of that being the case. Otherwise, we don't see Carrot this chapter, because this was a chapter, like many beforehand, that kind of focuses on the lore that was going on during the whole Wano saga, you might as well say. Not even arc, the saga. So I'm wondering if we're going to get a pan around the world, since this is a big thing and Luffy is a Yonko. This is kind of like the last step of power before Pirate King, you might as well say, in the narrative. I mean, logically. So I wonder if we're going to get a sort of pan around the world of multiple characters now, seeing that Luffy has become a Yonko. So for the answer of whether Carrot has joined the crew or not, that may not be a thing until, like, say 1061, because I think 1060 will still be in the mire of wrapping down and showing what the world was doing while the Straw Hats were held up in Wano. So yeah, that's all I have for you today. Thank you for watching. If you like stuff like this, please feel free to check out my YouTube channel, Polipede Works. And if you like what you see, I would appreciate your subscription. Thank you so much. See you next time.